I still remember that heart-stopping moment, the first 100 words that rewrote my reality in an instant. There I was, standing at the entrance of my wife's sister's wedding, expecting to celebrate love and family, when a stern security guard barked, "Your name is not on the guest list." His words hit me like a sledgehammer, and in that instant, my world shattered. Every hope of belonging, every promise of unity we'd once cherished, disintegrated before my eyes. The joyful chatter of guests inside was replaced by a cold, unyielding silence that echoed the betrayal I felt deep in my soul. I was uninvited, unwanted, and utterly alone. I had always assumed that family events were meant to be a safe haven, a time when differences were set aside in the name of love and unity. 4 years, I dedicated myself to our blended family, sacrificing my pride and time to ensure that every gathering was filled with warmth and acceptance. My wife's sister's wedding was supposed to be a celebration of that very spirit, an opportunity to come together, to laugh, and to create lasting memories. I had even put on my best suit, combed my hair just right, and rehearsed a smile that I hoped would mask the underlying insecurities I sometimes felt. Yet nothing could have prepared me for the crushing blow of being stopped at the door. When I approached the entrance, my heart brimming with excitement and nervous anticipation, I was greeted not by a familiar smile or a welcoming nod, but by the cold, unyielding gaze of a security guard. His eyes, devoid of empathy, scanned a clipboard before him as if I were nothing more than a stray element in a perfectly ordered list. "Your name is not on the list," he repeated in a monotone, his voice echoing off the polished marble floor. I tried to explain, to insist that I was part of the family, but my words were met with a curt shake of his head. In that moment, the festive lights of the reception hall seemed to mock me, shining brightly on a celebration that no longer included me. Stunned and hurt, I lingered at the entrance as confusion swirled in my mind. Had I missed an invitation? Was there some misunderstanding? I replayed every conversation from the past few weeks, every phone call, every text message, searching for a clue that might explain why I had been cast out on such a public stage. The silence from my wife's family was deafening. I glanced at the crowd through the glass doors and saw laughter, chatter, and joy, a stark contrast to the loneliness that now enveloped me. I felt a crushing sense of betrayal, as if the very foundation of my identity within this family had been questioned and dismissed without a second thought. In that moment of isolation, my mind raced back to the years of effort I had invested in being part of this family. I recalled the countless times I had stayed up late, planning gatherings, mending conflicts, and even making personal sacrifices to ensure harmony. I remembered the wedding anniversaries, the birthday parties, and the simple, shared meals that I had thought bonded us together. All those moments of vulnerability, all those small gestures of love, now seemed like a lie. I was suddenly an outsider in a celebration meant for those who mattered. Bitter tears welled up, not only for the humiliation of being publicly shunned, but also for the unspoken rejection of everything I had worked for. The security guard's words, so clinically delivered, cut deeper than any harsh criticism I had ever heard. I realized then that I wasn't just denied entry to a wedding, I was being told that my presence, my value, was no longer recognized by the people I had once called family. In the aftermath of that excruciating moment, I slowly turned away from the glittering doors of the reception hall and began to walk into the cold night. Every step felt like a painful goodbye to a part of my life that I had cherished. I wandered aimlessly along the city streets, the neon lights blurring into streaks of color, each one a reminder of the warmth I had lost. The chill in the air matched the icy despair settling in my heart, and I couldn't help but wonder what had changed, what betrayal lay hidden behind those closed doors. As I walked, I recalled the wedding preparations, the excited phone calls, the shared jokes with family, the promises of a joyous celebration, and felt the sting of disbelief. How could I have been forgotten? Had I done something to deserve this exclusion? Questions tumbled through my mind, each one a dagger of doubt and pain. The vibrant future I had envisioned with this extended family was crumbling, and I was left to pick up the shattered pieces of my pride. In that solitary moment, amidst the indifferent hum of the city, I resolved that I would not let this act of exclusion define me. I vowed that I would seek the truth behind this cruel oversight, and if necessary, carve out a new path where my worth would be recognized on my own terms. I made a silent promise to myself as I stared at the dark sky. I would uncover the reasons behind this betrayal, confront the unspoken rift in our family, and rebuild my identity from the ruins of this humiliation. That night marked the beginning of an arduous journey, a path of self-discovery, defiance, and the relentless pursuit of dignity. I returned to my small apartment with a heavy heart but also a spark of determination flickering within me. I began to jot down every detail of the day in my journal, each word a cathartic release of the pain that had overwhelmed me. I vowed to use this experience not as a final blow, but as the impetus for transformation, a turning point where I would rise from the ashes of rejection and forge a future that was truly my own. I knew the road ahead would be steep and fraught with emotional challenges, but deep down, I also understood that sometimes the most painful betrayals can unearth a hidden strength, a strength I was determined to harness as I stepped forward into an uncertain, yet promising, new chapter of my life. In the hours and days after that painful, public rejection at the hotel entrance, I found myself swallowed by a deep isolation that felt as vast as an endless night. I retreated to the cramped confines of my modest apartment, the silence of the empty room a stark contrast to the laughter and chatter I had been forced to hear. Each moment seemed to echo the memory of that humiliating experience, her friends' mocking snickers, the cold voice of the security guard, and the crushing realization that I was not welcome in the celebration of a life I had believed was shared. I spent long, restless nights pacing my living room, replaying every detail in my mind, trying desperately to understand how I had been so completely overlooked by someone I had once loved and trusted. I remember that first night vividly. I sat on the worn-out sofa with nothing but the soft hum of a distant street lamp to accompany my thoughts. I opened an old journal, a battered, leather-bound notebook that I had kept since my early days of ambition, and began writing. With each word, I attempted to capture the raw mix of shock, sorrow, and a burgeoning anger that threatened to overwhelm me. I wrote about the disbelief that had taken hold as I watched my wife's indifference and the callous laughter of her friends. My hand trembled as I documented every painful detail, the cool indifference of the security guard, the way I had tried to insist on my presence at the celebration, and the bitter sting of feeling not only uninvited but utterly unwanted. That night, the journal became both a witness to my pain and a silent promise that I would not allow this humiliation to define me forever. In the ensuing days, my routine became a blur of melancholy and introspection. I found myself withdrawing from social gatherings and even skipping work, anything to avoid confronting a world that now seemed hostile and indifferent. I questioned every decision I had made, every sacrifice I had endured, wondering if I had been foolish to believe in the strength of our family. The dreams we once built together, the quiet plans for a future filled with shared vacations and meaningful celebrations, now lay in ruins, and I felt as if I were wandering through a labyrinth of shattered expectations. The painful irony was that I had saved diligently, planned every detail for that much-anticipated vacation, and yet, when it came time to share the experience, I was left to fend for myself. Amid this inward descent, however, a small, persistent voice began to emerge from the depths of my despair. In the silent, lonely hours before dawn, when the weight of rejection was almost unbearable, I found that the bitterness slowly gave way to a questioning resolve. I began to ask myself, how did it come to this? Was I so invisible that I wasn't worth including? The questions were painful, but they also planted the seeds of introspection. I started retracing our conversations over the past few months, the casual texts, the half-smiles, the subtle hints that maybe our connection had been fraying without my notice. In the process, I recognized a pattern. While I had always strived to be a dedicated partner, I had, perhaps unknowingly, allowed my own needs and ambitions to be overshadowed by the desire to please. The realization was bitter, but it was also liberating. I began to understand that this moment of rejection, as devastating as it was, might be the impetus I needed to rediscover who I truly was, independent of the expectations others placed on me. Slowly, I started taking small steps to reclaim my space in the world. I resumed my morning walks, wandering through quiet, empty streets as the first light of day filtered through the fog. With each step, I tried to imagine a future where I would no longer be defined by exclusion, a future where my contributions, my hard work, and my dreams were recognized and celebrated. I began to reread books on resilience and self-worth, absorbing the stories of individuals who had risen from their own personal betrayals to create lives of purpose and passion. Their words, both raw and inspiring, reminded me that every setback was a prelude to a comeback. One day, as I was sifting through old photographs and mementos in my apartment, images of happier times when our family had gathered with warmth and laughter, I came across a faded picture of a previous vacation we had all taken together. The photo captured a moment of genuine joy, my wife smiling brightly, my children laughing, and I, too, caught in a moment of pure, unguarded happiness. The sight of that photo made my heart ache with loss, yet it also stirred something within me, a determination not to let this be the final chapter of my story. I began to write down a list of small, achievable goals for myself, reconnecting with a few old friends, finding a new passion project, perhaps even planning a solo trip to rediscover the world beyond the confines of this betrayal. I reached out to Mark, a longtime friend whose steady presence had always been a source of comfort. Over cups of bitter coffee in a nearly deserted diner, I recounted the events of that humiliating day and shared my inner turmoil. "You deserve to be seen, to be heard," he told me, his tone firm yet compassionate. "This isn't the end of your story, it's the beginning of a new chapter. Use this pain to fuel your transformation." His words resonated deeply, planting a seed of hope in a heart that had been parched by rejection. Mark urged me to start small, to focus on reclaiming the parts of myself I had neglected for so long, the ambitions, the dreams, and the very essence of who I was before this betrayal. Encouraged by his support, I began to make subtle changes in my daily routine. I cleared out the clutter from my apartment, donating items that reminded me too painfully of a shared past that now felt fractured. I rearranged my living space, painting the walls a fresh, bright color, a symbolic act of starting anew. Each small change, though seemingly trivial, felt like a declaration that I was reclaiming control of my own life. At work, I found solace in my responsibilities. The projects that once filled me with dread now became opportunities to assert my competence and creativity. I threw myself into tasks with a renewed vigor, determined to prove that I was more than the sum of my setbacks. Every successful meeting, every compliment from a colleague, became a small victory, a reminder that my value was intrinsic and not contingent on the approval of others. As my professional confidence grew, so did my belief that I could rebuild not just my self-esteem, but a future that was wholly mine. In the quiet of my apartment, I started a new journal, a companion for my evolving journey. Unlike the raw, anguished pages of the immediate aftermath, this journal became a space for reflection, planning, and the quiet documentation of small wins. I wrote about the moments when I felt a flicker of hope, when the world outside, with its gentle sunrise and the soft rustling of leaves, seemed to whisper promises of a better tomorrow. I penned down my aspirations, to rediscover old passions, to explore new avenues of creativity, and to build a life where I would no longer be defined by the actions of others, but by the strength of my own resolve. One particularly transformative evening, I attended a local support group for individuals who had faced public humiliation and personal betrayal. The room was filled with a diverse mix of people, each with their own harrowing stories of being cast aside, of facing rejection in the most unexpected places. As we shared our experiences, I realized that my pain was not unique, it was part of a collective human struggle against the forces that sought to diminish our worth. In that circle of raw, unfiltered emotion, I found the courage to speak my truth, to voice the pain, the anger, and the slow, determined hope that had begun to bloom in my heart. A woman in the group, her eyes glistening with tears, told me, "Sometimes, when the world tells you that you're not enough, you have to become the living proof that you are." Her words, simple and powerful, resonated deeply, igniting within me a resolve to transform every sting of rejection into a building block for my future. Emboldened by that shared vulnerability, I resolved to embark on a journey of self-discovery. I enrolled in a series of workshops focused on personal growth and emotional resilience. I learned mindfulness techniques that helped me find calm in the chaos, and I began to explore creative outlets, picking up an old guitar, writing poetry, and even dabbling in photography. Each new skill, every shared experience, helped to reinforce the truth that I was more than the humiliation I had endured. I was a man capable of profound transformation, and every moment of pain was merely the precursor to a new beginning. Yet, even as I built these foundations of renewal, the sting of that humiliating day lingered like a ghost in my thoughts. I couldn't forget the sneers, the whispered comments, the way my wife's friends had jeered as I stood at the entrance of that swanky hotel. Those memories were raw, unyielding, and, at times, nearly unbearable. In the darkest hours before dawn, I would lie awake, the silence of the room punctuated by the echo of my own questioning heart. But each morning, as the sun broke through the clouds, I reminded myself that every day was a chance to reclaim my self-worth, a chance to prove to myself that I was not defined by the cruel actions of others. As the weeks turned into months, a new sense of purpose began to crystallize within me. I started to plan small adventures, solo trips to places that had always inspired me, journeys that allowed me to lose myself in new landscapes and rediscover the beauty of life beyond the pain. On one such trip, while walking along a quiet, windswept beach, I found a deep, resonant calm that seemed to speak directly to my soul. The endless expanse of ocean, the rhythmic crashing of waves against the shore, and the vast, open sky all served as metaphors for the journey ahead, a journey where I would not be defined by past betrayals, but by the strength with which I embraced the future. Each new experience, each carefully chosen moment of reflection, added layers to my emerging identity. I began to see that my self-worth was not something granted by others, it was something I had to nurture from within. The path to healing was long and fraught with setbacks, but it was also lined with small, significant victories, a supportive conversation with a friend, a moment of creative expression that felt like pure joy, a successful project at work that reminded me of my capabilities. With every step, I was slowly reclaiming my place in the world, redefining what it meant to be whole, to be resilient, to be truly me. Now, as I stand on the threshold of a future that is as uncertain as it is promising, I carry with me the scars of a painful past, but also the luminous hope of a reborn self. I have learned that every act of betrayal, every moment of humiliation, can be transformed into a stepping stone toward a life defined by authenticity, courage, and relentless determination. The journey is far from over, and I know there will be more nights when the memories come back unbidden. Yet, I also know that I have forged a strength that no one can take away, a strength born of both deep sorrow and the steadfast belief that I am more than the sum of my scars. With each new sunrise, I reaffirm the promise I made on that lonely, stormy night, to rebuild my identity, to cherish the quiet victories, and to create a legacy of resilience that shines brighter than any shadow of betrayal. I am no longer the man who was mocked and dismissed at that fateful moment. I am a man who has risen from the depths of despair to embrace the limitless potential of tomorrow. In the days that followed my bold decision to reclaim everything, my world became a battleground where every emotion, raw anger, profound sorrow, and a flicker of hope, waged war inside me. I had reached the point of no return. My wife's cold dismissal, her public betrayal by kicking me out of her company, had set off a chain reaction I could no longer ignore. Now, with my secret ace poised to overturn the rules of the game, I had to confront not only the fallout of that fateful day but also the deep, lingering scars of a shattered past. That morning, as I prepared for what I knew would be a decisive moment in my career and life, I woke to the gentle light of dawn filtering through the blinds of my modest apartment, a far cry from the luxurious world I once shared with her. I sat in silence for long moments, gathering my thoughts. Every heartbeat reminded me of the countless hours I had dedicated to building this company from the ground up, of the sleepless nights, the risks taken, and the unwavering determination that had defined me. And now, despite the public mockery and humiliation, I held a secret weapon, a meticulously crafted blueprint that would not only rescue my professional legacy but redefine it entirely. I began my day with a quiet ritual, a solitary walk through a city that was just waking up. The cool, crisp air cleared my mind as I revisited the memories of my past, the countless board meetings, the long discussions with investors, the camaraderie of a team that had once believed in my vision, and even the bitter laughter echoing from that infamous day when I was uninvited. With each step, I repeated silently, I am more than what they said. I am the architect of my own destiny. Those words, both a prayer and a promise, resonated deep within me. I knew that the road ahead would be steep, but with every measured pace, I was determined to rise above the despair that had once threatened to consume me. At work, the atmosphere was tense but charged with an undercurrent of anticipation. I had kept my blueprint hidden for months, carefully refining every detail, financial projections, innovative digital strategies, and a complete overhaul of our outdated systems. It wasn't just a plan for modernizing the company, it was a manifesto declaring that I would no longer be defined by the narrow, dismissive judgments of my estranged wife and her circle. I had spent years gathering evidence of inefficiencies, rallying like-minded colleagues who felt marginalized by an old guard resistant to change. In secret meetings held in quiet corners of our office and after-hours sessions in modest cafes, we forged a unified vision, a promise that we would transform the very fabric of the business. The day of the final board meeting arrived with a palpable tension. I walked into the room with the blueprint clutched tightly in my hand, a physical reminder of the transformation I had painstakingly designed. The boardroom was filled with executives whose eyes carried a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. I could sense that whispers and side glances danced around me, but I walked in with a quiet confidence that belied the tumult within. My heart pounded as I took my seat at the long, polished table. This was the moment that would determine not just the future of the company but the very essence of my self-worth. I began my presentation slowly, deliberately, every word measured yet laden with the gravity of my journey. I recounted the days of struggle, the long nights when I had fought to keep the company afloat against a tide of derision, and the painful moments when I felt utterly abandoned by the one person who was meant to be my partner. My voice, steady and resolute, filled the room as I outlined my revolutionary plan, a blueprint for a company reborn, driven by innovation, efficiency, and an unyielding commitment to excellence. I spoke of the untapped potential within our outdated systems, of the market opportunities that lay dormant behind rigid hierarchies, and of the transformative power of embracing modern technology. Every slide, every graph was not just data, it was a declaration that I was ready to reshape the future. As I spoke, I watched the faces around me. Some were skeptical, their eyes narrowing as they considered the risks. Others leaned forward, captivated by the raw passion in my words. Even my father-in-law, whose approval had once meant everything, seemed to waver, a subtle shift that, in that moment, felt like a silent acknowledgement of my vision. The tension in the room was almost tangible, each pause in my presentation met with murmurs and thoughtful expressions. I could feel the energy shift as my colleagues began to ask probing questions, questions that challenged the status quo and forced me to defend every assumption, every projection. I answered with conviction, drawing on every sleepless night and every moment of bitter reflection that had brought me to this point. When the presentation ended, a heavy silence fell over the room, a silence filled with both uncertainty and the promise of change. I left the boardroom with mixed emotions, a deep, unyielding relief that I had finally spoken my truth, and a simmering determination that I would not rest until every part of the company was transformed by the vision I had shared. In that moment, I knew that my secret ace had not only been a tool for corporate reinvention but a personal vindication. I was reclaiming my worth, not as defined by my wife's callous dismissal, but by the undeniable proof of my dedication, creativity, and leadership. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of intense activity and subtle victories. My strategic changes began to ripple through the company, new systems were implemented, old processes were scrapped, and a culture of innovation slowly took root. The board, once steeped in tradition and resistant to change, started to see the value in my ideas. My colleagues, who had once whispered doubts behind closed doors, began to openly support the transformation. Every small success, a streamlined operation here, a successful client pitch there, felt like a personal triumph, a tangible reminder that I was more than the sum of their dismissive judgments. Yet, even as the company began its slow but steady evolution, I could not completely silence the echoes of my personal betrayal. Late at night, as I sat by the window of my modest apartment watching the city's lights flicker like distant promises, I would allow myself a moment of vulnerability. I would think of the years of sacrifice, the nights filled with the hope of mutual respect, and the crushing blow of being told that my worth was negligible. In those moments, I penned down my thoughts in a fresh journal, a chronicle of my journey from humiliation to empowerment. Every page was a testament to the resilience that had been forged in the fires of betrayal, a reminder that even the deepest wounds could be transformed into the foundation of a new, brighter future. In the midst of these reflections, I began to rebuild not only my professional life but also the fragmented pieces of my identity. I reconnected with friends who had always seen me for who I truly was, a person of integrity, vision, and quiet strength. We met in intimate gatherings, where we discussed our dreams, our failures, and the lessons learned from life's harshest trials. Their support was a constant reminder that I was not alone. My journey was shared by many, and together, we could rise above the shallow judgments of those who had once tried to diminish our worth. One crisp afternoon, as spring was giving way to summer, I took a solo trip, a journey meant to clear my mind and reaffirm my commitment to a future defined by my own terms. I wandered through bustling streets, quiet parks, and serene beaches, absorbing the vibrant energy of life all around me. With each new experience, I felt the weight of my past gradually lift, replaced by a newfound clarity and a sense of possibility that I had long thought lost. I realized that my future was not chained to the memories of betrayal, but was instead a blank canvas awaiting the strokes of my own ambition. That trip became a turning point, a moment when I finally understood that the road to true redemption lies not in seeking revenge, but in building a future that reflects the best parts of who you are. I returned home with a renewed sense of purpose, a determination to nurture every opportunity for growth, and a deep, unshakable belief in my own worth. I knew there would be challenges ahead, days when the ghosts of the past would resurface, but I was ready to meet them head-on. Now, as I stand on the brink of this new era, I look back on my journey with a sense of profound gratitude for every painful lesson and every hard-won victory. I have learned that true strength comes not from avoiding pain, but from embracing it, learning from it, and using it as the foundation upon which you rebuild your life. My identity is no longer defined by the scornful words of my wife or the dismissive attitudes of those who once doubted me. I have reclaimed my worth, not through vengeance, but through relentless perseverance and the courage to forge a future that is wholly, unapologetically my own. Every new sunrise now represents a promise, a chance to write a new chapter in my life, one where my dreams, my innovations, and my inner strength shine brighter than any shadow of betrayal. I have transformed my pain into a beacon of hope, a source of inspiration not only for myself but for everyone who has ever felt diminished by the cruelty of others. As I continue to lead the company into a vibrant, forward-thinking future, I carry with me the unwavering conviction that my worth is defined by my actions, my resilience, and the unbreakable spirit that has carried me through every trial. This is my story, a story of betrayal, heartbreak, and ultimately, redemption. I am no longer the man who was cast aside, whose worth was questioned by those closest to him. I am a visionary, a leader reborn from the ashes of humiliation, and a father determined to secure a future of hope and possibility for my child. My journey is far from over. Each day brings new challenges, new opportunities to grow, and new moments to prove that no one can ever diminish the light that burns within me. As I close this chapter and look toward the horizon of a future reimagined, I do so with an unyielding resolve. I have transformed every setback into a stepping stone, every tear into a testament of my strength. I am the architect of my own destiny, and I will continue to build a legacy defined not by the betrayals of the past, but by the limitless potential of tomorrow. And with each step I take, I reaffirm the promise that I made on that long, painful night, that I would rise, rebuild, and ultimately, shine brighter than ever before.